Hi, everybody. Hope you're having a great afternoon or evening. And welcome to the channel, of course. Go through the procedure of setting up my camera. It's not bad. See how that works there. All right. Welcome in, everyone, to the fold and back to the Barbecue Network channel. Hope everyone's having a nice afternoon or evening, morning, wherever you're watching this. Go through a couple of DVDs, and I'm answering some more of the Q&A questions. The topic of the video is from one of the Q&A questions that I received from Terry in Oklahoma. Appreciate it very much, Terry. Hope you're doing well out there, and glad you're taking care of your family in this difficult time of the winter as it is. Captain Marvel's released today in thousands of theaters in North America, and they're saying that the international total for it after 1 week should be around 350 million. So I find it kind of funny, all these projections by John Campea and others saying that it's going to top out at 650 to 700 million. The movie would have to really fail after that first week to only end up at 750 or whatever, 700. It's actually mathematically impossible. So we'll see these people starting to do their adjustment to be like, oh, I thought that movie was going to be big, but not this big, that type thing. I don't really care either way. In fact, just glad to be able to track the numbers and see where they end up and all that. Let's go with one of the first Q&As I got. We'll get to Terry in Oklahoma's question in a little while. Why not go with Brian in Washington, D.C.? And Brian in Washington, D.C. writes, I find it odd, basically I'm paraphrasing, but he finds it odd that certain movies don't get a wide theatrical release where others like Greta do. What can I elaborate on about that? Well, he mentions Brawl in Cell Block 99, which didn't get a wide or any theatrical release, Bone Tomahawk, a couple others, which either didn't get a wide or got a very non-traditional theatrical release. Then you get a film like Greta, starring Chloe Moretz and starring Isabelle Huppert, who I believe was nominated for Best Actress in either 2014 or 2013. So you'd think that she would have cash grabbed for an American film by now, but this movie was acquired by Focus Features, and I believe as a condition of its acquisition was that it had to be in wide release. So usually these conditions are written into them when they're acquired. I believe that Neil Jordan wanted to get back, in the front of everyone's mind, and you don't necessarily get in the front of everyone's mind unless you create a bird box like that on Netflix. If you just create like an average or above average movie, you get lost in the shuffle nowadays in the streaming landscape. So they figured, hey, we'll take this dead week right before Captain Marvel, maybe open with between 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 million, something like that. They were definitely expecting more than the 5 or 6 million that they got. And that's kind of the difference between having a hit nowadays or not. When you only get like 500 or 600 per theater average, which I'm very well versed on per theater averages, it's very low, except in some theaters where it was very high in urban areas. You become to be in a situation where it was just a gross miscalculation. So the situation like Brawl and Cell Block 99 was almost the opposite. It was a condition that they didn't want to have to go forward with a big theatrical release and cut into whatever they were going to make on it. So I hope that answers your question, and I could break it down for you a lot more if you would like. Just go ahead and email me, and I could follow up on that explanation. Question to everyone else out there: has anyone ever tried this cranberry pineapple drink? Sometimes I go to the market and kind of in a hurry or whatever, and got kind of tired of. I drink cranberry cherry like almost all the time, so I figured why not try something else. I'll try it on camera here. I tried it on camera I tried it non on camera a couple minutes ago. And, it's an acquired taste, so let's see if I've acquired it by now. I mean, I can live with it. I definitely haven't acquired the taste for it yet, but I can live with it. I don't know. It tastes too sweet. It tastes like. I mean, I'm just gonna hazard to say cranberry and pineapple don't mix well together. But like I say, I'm not gonna return the drink or anything like that. I'm gonna enjoy it or endure it. We've got Curly Sue here. She's a good dog. She was once owned or lived at the house of Leslie Jones, the woman of Ghostbusters and Saturday Night Live fame. So Curly was a good dog. She lived right there in that house. And then over the years, I realized no one was really taking care of her the best. So now I have Curly Sue. She's my good girl. She's a part bloodhound. Yeah. A good dog. All right. Let's go to the next email. And this has to do with award recognition and stuff too. I think it's a really good email because I agree with what this person's about to say. This is Candace in Chicago. And she writes, "Hi, I love what you're doing and thanks for all your work in the world of television. You're welcome. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of hard work in the world of TV to see what I can do and achieve and all that. So I appreciate it whenever someone can acknowledge my work." So she says she just recently saw the movie Silence by Martin Scorsese, and she's very surprised that it didn't get more Oscar award recognition. And as am I. I mean, I love the film. I find it to be a really interesting, very beautifully made film. I believe he made something rather commercial, be it Hugo or something else. Did he make Hugo? And then his next movie was Silence? So yeah, that's quite a double up there. If you don't know what we're talking about, Liam Neeson and Adam Driver, among others, are in a movie called Silence that has to do with Christianity and Japan. And without spoiling it too much, it's a very brutal, very interesting movie about the transition from Japan of the old world to when the missionaries and everything were going over there and the resistance that they encountered. Highly recommend the movie. Can't really give you a straight answer as to why. Except they didn't want to maybe, I don't know, sometimes when you build these Oscar campaigns, you're not wanting to, you don't care about, how do I say this best? The movie stands so strongly on its own merits, they didn't want to do anything to water it down, I guess. Whereas you got crap like that usually gets nominated. They don't care about throwing an extra $15-20 million for an Oscar campaign, which made dilute what the actual meaning of the film was. So I think they really did care about the meaning and the art of what they were making, and they didn't want to compromise art in the business with too much with all that. So they just took the hit. I mean, it lost money, I'm sure. It got critics to like it, but the critics still, it's like they almost wanted to be placated to, where the movie is extremely challenging, very challenging. Changes around, obviously you go look at missionaries and you think, oh yeah, they're victimizing other cultures. Well, really, in this one, the missionaries are the ones that are being preyed on by the old world. So it's an interesting dynamic, and I want to highly recommend exploring. Wouldn't mind seeing other movies set in that deal. I like Last Samurai. I like Silence. I find it to be a very interesting time period that challenges the common narrative. So we'll leave it at that. I'm going to get to the final email question. I figured I might as well, as I've been going through different different DVD sets that I have. This one I got. It has 187, directed by Kevin Reynolds. I know Orc's a real big fan of this movie. I might go ahead and rewatch it, actually. It's a pretty brutal movie. Kind of is a movie that takes place in the environment that I grew up in a way. So when I watch it, this has a commentary, so I might as well check it out for the commentary. When I watch it, it brings back a lot of memories about how it was going to high school and situations like that, to be honest. And I feel really bad for Samuel L. Jackson's character. The other one is The Long Kiss Goodnight, and that's a joy to watch. Sure, there's some tough scenes, some tough situations in it, but what a really interesting idea for a movie. One that is fresh for a remake. People are always saying they want to see a remake. Remake this, remake that, remake this, remake that. I say if you don't remake The Long Kiss Goodnight and figure out a way to do it properly, then you shouldn't remake anything else because it's not perfect. It's definitely not a perfect film. You gotta figure out what's great in it and remake it. I think it's a good film to be remade. I really enjoy it as it is, but would love to see a remake of The Long Kiss Goodnight. What do you think out there? Do you think it's a perfect movie? Do you think there's some things that could be improved? Anyway, going back to 187, you got a four-person commentary. Those are usually a little awkward. You got Samuel L. Jackson, Clifton Gonzalez, who I think became Clifton Collins, Cliff Collins, Kevin Reynolds, and then the writer, Scott Yegeman. Interested to see how Scott Yegeman came up with this concept because if you've never been a teacher, I could find it a very hard movie to write. Actually, I would assume that he was a teacher at one point in his life or knew teachers. Next video I want to send is a DVD here. Next DVD. It's everything but Psycho 1. You got Psycho 2, Psycho 3, Psycho 4, The Beginning, which I really enjoy that one as well. That's directed by Mick Garris. Oh, wow. Okay, my mistake. Bernard Schwartz. Wait a minute. Richard Franklin directs Part 2, Psycho 2. I always thought it was Anthony Perkins. My mistake. Psycho 3 is directed by Anthony Perkins. Psycho 4 is directed by my friend Mick Garris, and I think he does a bang-up job. And then Bates Motel is not the Freddie Highmore Bates Motel. It's more of a comedic TV movie where Bud Cort plays, Norman Bates, and then Lori Petty plays, I don't know who she plays in it, but she's in it. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. Anyone out there seen Bates Motel? Let me know. Huge fan of Psycho 2, 3, and 4. I think they're very underrated. So yeah, what I love about that, you put that DVD in and you got 4 choices. You got basically 4 hours or 8 hours worth of programming, 7+ hours worth of programming to watch. So that's always something really, really cool. And Psycho 2, an hour and 53 minutes. So definitely a lot to bite off, a lot to chew on that film. This next one, I'm really excited that I found it. Been kind of perturbed the last couple of days. I have all these DVDs and I couldn't find this, but now that I found it, it's like it's all water under the bridge. I think I mentioned it the other day. It's 3 John Carpenter films and then 1 trashy movie called Virus, produced by Gail Ann Hurd and directed by John Bruno. Who the fuck is John Bruno? No idea who John Bruno is, but he directed The Virus. And The Virus, as it's called, has Donald Sutherland, William Baldwin, Jonah Pakula, and other people in it. So it's not very good. Village of the Damned in my top 5 John Carpenter movies for sure. Very much think it's quite underrated. Kirstie Alley, Michael Paré, Linda Kozlowski, Karen Conn, who plays Christopher Reeve's wife in it. I think she does a really, really good job. Without spoiling anything too much in the movie, there's this great scene where their child, Karen Conn's character is cooking, and the child is staring at her so much to the point that Karen Conn is basically like stared at until she puts her arm very, very hot boiling water, her arm right into boiling water. And it's a brutal and terrifying scene. The Karen Khan does such good facial acting. You can really see the horror of what's going on in the situation. And people, why do people like horror movies? Because when you see people really scared on film, you see someone really being like, I know this girl is staring at me. I know this girl's staring at me. I'm not going to do what she's telling me to do. I'm not going to do what she's telling me. And the next thing you know, you're putting your arm in hot boiling water because obviously the children's still telling them to. So if you've never seen Village of the Damned, go ahead and check this movie out. It's a very well produced movie. I think that's a very big strength of the movie. Executive producer Shep Gordon was involved in it. So this is when Shep Gordon made quite a lot of impact on our culture in the 80s, 90s, 70s, 60s. Going, even now, even They Live. I got that one on here as well, and that starred Roddy Piper, um, Keith David, beautiful Meg Foster. What can you say about this film? It's just so good. 1988. So I was 7 years old when this movie came out, and yeah, it still holds up. It's actually probably gotten even better over time. I really enjoyed it when I saw it as a kid. Its reputation sure gotten better over time. Finally, I have The Thing. Yeah, I've talked about The Thing on here. I'm not the world's biggest fan of it. I've only seen it once. I can watch it more on here anytime I want. I never really want to bite it off and watch it though. It's one of those things that you want to watch. I don't know. I watched it several years ago. I'll watch it again. I think it was really powerful. I never want to water it down, is I guess what I mean by that. And thank you out there. Hope you're having a good, enjoyable evening watching some movies and stuff. Now to transition to something completely different. Blue Chips. We've talked a little bit about William Friedkin on this channel. Hunted, To Live and Die in L.A. I could talk about any of his other films, but this is one. It's completely outside the norm for his normal movies. It's almost a comedy at some points. It's Blue Chips. It's definitely a sports movie, definitely a very dramatic sports movie, most of all. But definitely some lighter touches in it as well. You got really, really good situations going on in the movie, from Bernie Pollock making the costumes to the musical score by Nile Rodgers, Jeff Beck, Jed Lieber. Great editing by Robert K. Lambert. I think some of the basketball scenes, the way that the sequences are edited, basketball or not, are really well done. The production designer, James Bissell, uses the UCLA campus, uses a lot of things that exist at Pauley Pavilion to make a really unique situation in this film. Written by Ron Shelton. When people point out Bull Durham and they point out White Man Can't Jump, they never mention Blue Chips. But this bro, he wrote White Man Can't Jump, and he wrote Blue Chips. He wrote Tin Cup, Sports Maven. Got a great cast. Mary McDonnell. She'd been in, of course, Dances with Wolves just recently. Before that, Alfred Woodard steals the movie in one or two scenes that she's in. Anthony Hardaway, Penny Hardaway's in it. Shaquille O'Neal. Many other basketball players are in it playing different people. George Lynch, I believe, is in it. Bobby Hurley's in it. Bob Knight plays himself in it, a good friend of mine. Glad to see that Bob Knight is, it's always good to talk to him when I do talk to him. And glad that he's doing well. I wish that his performance in this film is definitely quite good. The best sports movie in years, says Jeffrey Lyons of Sneak Previews. I do agree with that. I think it's probably one of the best sports movies ever made. Basically, it's about Nick Nolte running a clean college program. He's going after some big blue chip athletes, and it's about what changes and what's good and all that for the school, and what's good for these individuals. Go ahead and check this out. I don't want to reveal it too much about it. If you've never seen Blue Chips, I think you'd like it. If you don't like basketball, I think you'd still like the movie. It's a really good personal story. I think it's definitely Nick Nolte's best performance. And he's been great in a lot of movies, so definitely check out Blue Chips. All right, let's see if this juice tastes a little bit better. A little bit better, I'm hoping. Let's just see if I can get used to this juice. Kind of makes me feel like, oh wow, I'm on a rocky boat. I don't know, when you taste something that you're not used to, it's like, oh, it's unsteadying. Uh, I'm getting used to it. I'll just leave it at that. I'm getting used to it. All right. As the headline in the video said, we may as well get to that. It was a great um, question. I get hundreds of emails every day, like I say, and I just pick out some of them here. I will be setting up the Patreon and everything like that. Just waiting to get basically they say I can't do Patreon posts and stuff on the Android that I have, so I got to do it online or whatever. Um, anyway, the question is very straightforward. Basically, it's like who are some of your favorite movie villains of all time? So I posed that question to you all. Who are some of your favorite movie villains of all time? First thing that popped into my head was Ursula from Little Mermaid. Um, the Poor Unfortunate Souls song, that whole thing. Basically, a very powerful, very good performance by Ursula. I don't know who the voice actress is or anything like that. And when I heard a rumor recently that Lady Gaga could be possibly playing Ursula in the live action version, that sounds somewhat intriguing to me. Not gonna lie, that sounds somewhat intriguing to me. Yeah, sure does. Sounds somewhat intriguing to me. Yeah. Another villain I really like. I mean, we're just going to animation first. The phony king of England. So the king in Robin Hood. One of my favorite villains. Silly, yes, but scary, yes. Conflicted, yes. Very much a very good villain. I'll try to stay away from the more obvious ones, such as the Joker and Heath Ledger. Yeah, by golly, I sure do like that one. I'm not gonna just go on about that. Everyone likes that one. I find that it was a pretty obscure movie I'm about to reference, but Eve from Eve of Destruction. She's an unstoppable villain. She's kind of like a female RoboCop that's bad. She's definitely one of my favorite villains of all time. Like of all time, I love that movie. Only actually seen it straight through once. Gotta get it on DVD as soon as possible. I really want to see that movie and own that movie. I really recommend that movie, and I really hope that everyone out there can enjoy it as much as I have. I would say the Carpathian King in Ghostbusters 2. One of the reasons that the movie is as effective as it is. I would say like Morgan Freeman's character in Nurse Betty. Pretty unconventional villain. Him and Chris Rock, father and son hitmen. They're definitely the villains of the piece, but you feel for their situation, and I could probably just leave it at that. Jerome Crab, actor from The Fugitive. He's the villain in Fugitive. He does a good job in that. I think the more fleshed out role he has is in No Mercy, starring Richard Gere and Kim Basinger. 1980s Columbia Pictures movie where Jerome Crabbe actually plays like a bayou crime lord, and obviously him being Belgian and all that stuff, he does such a good job playing that very challenging role in No Mercy. If you've seen the movie, I'm sure you know it's quite a challenging villainous role. He's not only powerful, he's seductive, he's manipulative. There's a lot of different things. So go ahead and check that one out. Let me know what you think about it. Without spoiling much, the villain or the dark forces in Dress to Kill. Top choices of my villainy. What are some other villains I'm really fond of? Well, I guess you would say Tony Russo is the villain in Married to the Mob. Connie Russo, maybe co-villain or villain to his villain, something like that. Those two are clearly in my top favorites as well. So why don't you guys let me know some of your favorite villains out there? Are there some villains you think that are really popularly accepted that you don't think are good villains, or tell me more? I know Mason Verger is kind of a victim that turns to a villain, but Mason Verger by Gary Oldman in Hannibal, he does quite a good job. you actually feel bad for Hannibal Lecter. I mean, I don't feel bad, but it's like that person's goal, Mason Verger's goal, is to abduct and kill Hannibal Lecter. So you start to actually feel sympathy for both of them in a way because of all the difficulties that Hopkins has made him endure, and then vice versa, how this man now wants to have him basically eaten alive by pigs. Definitely something to really wrap your head around. I know I probably said it a bunch, but the kid in Children of the Corn 3, definitely one of the best villains of all time. I mean, how Dano Cherney is not respected among these great villain lists about who's a great villain really drives me nuts. Especially the great respect that Children of the Corn 1 gets. Sure, Malachi did great, but this kid did better. I mean, this kid did better. This kid did better. It's like no doubt about it. Um, Other great villains. I mean, Gary Sinise in Snake Eyes. Maybe it's a slight spoiler, but I think he does a pretty good villainous turn. This one's a little bit more conventional, and obviously he did great in No Country for Old Men, so he'd be on that list for Anton Chigurh, but also the villain that he played, like the quote unquote Bond villain that he played in what was that, Skyfall? That was a pretty awesome performance. That was a pretty awesome performance. Patrick Swayze definitely is the villain in Point Break, but yet you definitely are rooting for him at points. So his performance is absolutely groundbreaking, in my opinion. No less than groundbreaking. A really incredible performance. And that's I've never seen the whole remake, but I can't even imagine. Or if I rack my brain, I would be able to remember who played in that. I believe it's a Hispanic actor that was in played in the movie Carlos, the epic 6-hour movie Carlos, and then that actor just had to go take a role in Point Break, playing Bodie. I mean, no one can play the role but Patrick Swayze. It's so silly. All right, so some other villains. Mickey Rourke in The Informers, dark villain role. Definitely a lot to it. One of my favorite roles for him. He does a wonderful job in that. Is he in Savages? No, I don't think he's in Savages. Or is he in Savages? I don't know. But Salma Hayek in Savages, very good villainous role. All the other quote unquote bad evildoers or people doing bad things in that movie, I think they do an effective job as well. I think they do an effective job as well. Um, what really lacks in salt is a good villain. So that movie sucked because there was no good villain. Um, I mean, clearly the Die Hard villain, yeah. I think the villain in Die Hard 4, Live Free or Die Hard, Timothy Oliphant and Maggie Q. I like that combo. I like that combo. I wish they had been given more screen time, given more R-rated material, perhaps. Um, I'd say like Ruth Gordon and you know the others of the Inner Circle and Rosemary's Baby, probably the more effective, one of the more effective villain roles of all time. To the Green Goblin in Maximum Overdrive. Basically, that truck went to like some Strasbourg acting school, or I guess I don't know, because that truck, man, almost feels like it's emoting at times. It feels like it's emoting at times. Have you ever seen Maximum Overdrive? Some of those electronics, when they start going bad, they seem like they're basically well trained actors. So that's a talent. That's definitely a talent. I think the villain in For the Love of Benji, the one where Benji goes to Greece, um, you don't feel for him because he's doing some pretty dark stuff. He's abducting a dog. I think even drugging a dog and trying to get. But he's such a manipulative, charming villain that you almost get confused and be like, oh yeah, that guy is doing good or he's doing bad. Especially when I was a kid. Now as an adult, I still do feel that. A very sympathetic villain, I would say, is Ed Harris and William Hurt in A History of Violence. whereas you don't. I mean, Ed Harris has more screen time. I'll never understand how he wasn't nominated and William Hurt was. It just goes to show you how weird the Oscars are sometimes. I think that situation, they did really good in that film. So the villainous aspects of History of Violence, very good in that film. Um, Other villains. I'm not going to reveal who I think is a good villain in Sea of Love, but I think that situation is very good, a villainous turn for sure. So yeah, I've listed quite a lot of villains here. I won't reveal the villain in Ghost, but I find that to be a very effective villain. Yeah, I mean, I've covered quite a lot of ground here. Uh, yeah, tell me some of your other favorite villains or people that you think were underrated in a particular role, be it villain or hero or whatever. Um, I'm just gonna rack my brain, make sure I haven't thought of any others. I think we're missing some really good villains from modern history. I think that they're missing in most of these comic book movies. There's not really good villains except for the Dark Knight. I really like Mr. Freeze as the villain from Batman and Robin. I really think Batman and Robin's an underrated movie. And Riddler, I didn't really like his performance too much at the time, but I feel he did a good job in retrospect. Penguin, Catwoman did a good job. Jack Nicholson's Joker, fantastic job. I'm not even gonna start, comparing the two or anything like that. Piper Laurie in Carrie, what a tremendous job. She was nominated for the Oscar, could have won for sure. She did a great job. So that covers it. That covered quite a lot of villains. I hope y'all can remind me of some other villains that you like, other good villain performances. I hope to cover more ground. Oh yeah, the villains in Lethal Weapon 2, diplomatic immunity, diplomatic immunity. Yeah, you can't get better than that. On the other end of the spectrum, villains in Lethal Weapon 3, not exactly the most memorable. Um, so with that being said, go ahead and leave your comments. Let me know what you think. I would say that Angelica Houston and Bobo in The Grifters, very dark, villainous turns for both. Um, yeah, just covered a lot of ground. Tried to go over as many villains as I could. I think the villains in Blind Fury, very, very bad people, and they do a really good job, whether it's Tex Cobb or others. It's a really underrated movie, and the dark villainous aspects of it underrated as well. All right, and clearly the villains in Rolling Thunder. I mean, if you guys ever check out the movie Rolling Thunder and you see what happens in it, I'm sure you'll agree with me. But yeah, I think we'll just leave it at that for now, and hope everyone enjoys their evening and afternoon. We did a live stream movie discussion where I talked about some of my favorite villains. And bye for now.